Carl, what have you done?
Think anyone will notice? Mr. Carl Jackson.
Carl Jackson was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. After the sudden death of his mother at the age of 11, he moved between LA and Orlando, Florida, trying to find his way in life.
So I'm clearly a Carl Jackson fan.
Carl Jackson.
Carl Jackson.
Carl Jackson.
Although he was introduced to hard work, faith, and family values, as a struggling teen, he wandered down the path of least resistance, finding himself jailed twice. By the grace of God, he attended an evangelical church and found that there was a better way and accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior.
There's just no fake stuff about Carl Jackson.
Now, on the Salem Podcast Network, Carl has launched on a journey to help people of all races and backgrounds to discover facts of America's true past, as well as realize the benefits of utilizing their God-given gifts and talents, which far outweigh any benefit from a government subsidy or program.
Dangerous out here. Let's roll, Carl.
Can't go fast.
Redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Hey, welcome to the Carl Jackson Podcast today. Listen, we got a couple of issues that I want to put on the topic menu, so we'll go ahead and set the table for that. On the topic menu for today is obviously what's happening. Thank you. So we're setting the table here. So what's on the topic menu today is what's happening in Ukraine, or the Russian attack on Ukraine that could be just hours or days away. This, according to the White House National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. We'll talk about that. And I'll be honest with you, I've been somewhat avoiding to talk about this until we figured out exactly what Putin was going to do. I feel like it is inching in the direction of where Putin does intend to attack, does intend to take Ukraine or parts of Ukraine and God knows where else. But I think Putin was playing political theater as long as he had to play political theater. In a sense, he was testing the waters. How far could I go? How far could I go with America, with NATO, so on, etc.? And he's seeing that. Listen, I don't believe that Putin, now you got to understand this. I do not believe that this issue in Russia and Ukraine is the biggest threat to America. I don't believe we need troops there. I've told you time and time again what we needed to do in order to stop Russia from invading Ukraine without firing a shot. Instead of issuing these tepid warnings from the Biden administration, Trump did everything we needed to do, in essence, to weaken Putin. Putin was completely fearful, or I would say respectful, of Trump in the White House because he was a strong man. He shut down Nord Stream 2 pipeline because it was in the best interest of the United States. If Biden were to work in the best interest of the United States, if he were to shut down, and I've reiterated this several times, but I'll do it again today as we go into this article from the New York Post. I'll do that. I'll do that again today. All Biden had to do: shut down Nord Stream 2 pipeline, reopen XL pipeline, reopen American lands for drilling, fracking, etc. That's on the menu. Another thing that is on the menu, and actually we'll go into a deeper dive on this particular issue. We'll go into a deeper dive with Justin Trudeau and what's happening with the Ottawa truckers, the Emergency Act, and all in everything that's involved there. You have to understand that Justin Trudeau has been groomed to be a dictator. He has been groomed to be a dictator. This is extremely important. Extremely important. Guys, we have a fight ahead of us like you wouldn't believe. We have an ideological fight that we must win, and we must understand what's happening with Russia. We must understand what's happening to our neighbors up north. This is insane, and why it is happening. This is extremely important. This is why, listen, I know that there are a lot of Americans that will say, listen, we don't want to be the police of the world. And I agree with that in part. But I want you to understand something. And this is why I say in part. When America is weak, the world pays attention. I want you to hear that. When America is weak, the world pays attention. But also, I need you to hear this. When America is strong, the world pays attention. We are a shining city on a hill. We are the greatest country that God has ever given man. So when we, by sheer example, project American exceptionalism and people see our success, when we take care of our own, when we take care of our own borders, our sovereignty, when we make stuff in America, when we grow strong, yes, dare I say, I'm a nationalist. When we grow strong, it matters. People see it. The world sees it. The world wants to emulate us. The world wants to be like us. Even dictators are forced, if you will, to soften when people see and understand the greatness and the exceptionalism of America. But when the world sees America falling, declining, when the world sees America is weak, well, they follow that too, but in a different way. Oh, if America is going to be on the decline, maybe we can be on the escalator up, so to speak. Someone is always going to want to be in charge. Someone is always going to want to be numero uno. This is what you have to understand. I told you guys, and I've said this before on my local show, and I've said it on the podcast. Biden and Harris are a complete and utter joke. And the world gets it, and the world understands it. Kamala Harris was sent to that region of the world in order to deter Putin. I want you to hear this audio clip of our vice president, this strong, black, female vice president, the first. Obviously, when you hear what she has to say, if you're Putin, tell me what you would think. If you were Putin, I want you to just hear this audio clip, and I want you to think in your head, if I were Putin, what would I think about America? Go ahead, Gabe.
We're very clear of our principles and our purpose, which is to be aligned with our allies, understanding that, listen, guys, we're talking about the potential for war in Europe. Let's really take a moment to understand the significance of what we're talking about. It's been over 70 years. And through those 70 years, as I mentioned yesterday, there has been peace and security. We are talking about the real possibility of war in Europe. So our position is for us very clear, which is as a leader, which we have been, bringing together the allies, working together around our collective and unified position, that we would all, not just prefer, we desire, we believe it is in the best interest of all that there is a diplomatic end to this moment. And so where do we want this to end? That is where we want it to end.
Okay. So if you're Putin, and you hear this audio clip, you're probably thinking exactly what you and I are thinking right now at this very moment. What the hell did she just say? We have no clue. But I can tell you what she didn't say. She didn't say that there will be major ramifications. She didn't say that there would be major consequences. She didn't say that we would shut down Nord Stream 2 quick, fast, and in a hurry, imposing sanctions on Putin, so on, etc. Anyone around his circle. We will make life totally miserable for these people. She didn't say that. Now, whether or not you feel like we should even bother with this story, bother with Ukraine, I get it. I don't feel like this is an issue of ours. But the problem is, the world has seen Afghanistan. The world is seeing how we're handling Ukraine. And I suspect that the world is going to become a much more dangerous place because of the fecklessness of the leadership that is in the White House. Hat tip New York Post. Russian attack on Ukraine could be hours or days away. National Security Advisor says. The White House National Security Advisor warned Monday that a Russian invasion of Ukraine could happen in the coming hours and days, and predicted that an attack ordered by Putin could be extremely violent and would aim to crush the Ukrainian people. Do you get the sense that these people are just acting like commentators on the White House, as if they have no plan? If you get that sense, it's because you're right. Jake Sullivan made the statement on NBC's Today Show in response to a question about the Washington Post report that the U.S. had informed the UN that Russia is compiling a list of Ukrainian dissidents to be killed or sent to camps. Okay, so they're informing us that Russia has compiled a list, a kill list, if you will. You know, like the kill list that America left behind to the Taliban in Afghanistan, the same type of list. So they know how to identify a kill list because Biden left one behind in Afghanistan, you know, with the Taliban. They know what these things are. Jake Sullivan goes on to say, "We believe what the Russians are planning will be extremely violent. It will cost the lives of the Ukrainians and Russians, civilians and military personnel alike." And again, I understand this isn't our fight, but I want you to understand how weak these people are. They've essentially given Putin the go-ahead. We also have intelligence to suggest that there will be an even greater form of brutality because this will not simply be some conventional war between two armies. It will be, he continues, Jake Sullivan does, it will be a war waged by Russia on the Ukrainian people to repress them. Excuse me. Still getting over a cold, guys. Forgive me. To crush them, to harm them. And that is what we laid out in detail for the UN last week, he says. Because we believe that the world must mobilize to counter this kind of Russian aggression should those tanks roll across the border, as we anticipate they very well may do in the coming hours or days. I tell you what, when we look at the aggression from the dictators around the world, when we look at the aggression of the new dictator in Canada, Justin Trudeau, we look at the dictatorships of China and Russia. All of our weakness in America has invited world aggression. People are going to shift. Now, obviously, we can't be involved in everything. We don't have a say in everything. We have to look for the things that impact the United States of America. We just cannot be everywhere. But you have to wonder. When we continue to see the weakness that is displayed in our White House, what moves dictators around the world are going to make. And eventually, that's going to threaten us. Eventually, it's going to threaten our borders. Actually, what am I talking about? Our borders are wide open, so we're already threatened. Now we have more fronts to worry about is the issue. Jake Sullivan goes on to say it will be a war waged by Russia on the Ukrainian people to repress them, to crush them, to harm them. And that is what we laid out in detail for the UN. Okay, so now we're going to the UN. This corrupt body of world organizations, we're going to the UN, and they're going there because they believe that the world must mobilize to counter this kind of Russian aggression should those tanks roll across the border. Okay, I repeated that, but I did want to make the point that we're going to the UN. You see how feckless and weak we are? Oh, we have to be diplomatic. You can deal with countries and nations one-on-one, just like President Trump did. You could bypass the UN. It makes no sense to me to have the UN, and I'll tell you why, because they don't share our values. Far too many people in there do not share our values. Of course, the people in the Western Hemisphere, you have some, perhaps in the Middle East. Obviously, we know that Israel does, but besides that, few and far between, right? So we have to be. I don't necessarily respect. I don't believe that we need to be involved in the UN. I wish they shipped the UN off somewhere else. Let some other country host it, and we'd stop paying for it or pay minimally to be a part of it, just so that we know what dictators around the world are doing, or so that we would know of any threats, any countries that might pose a threat to us. Other than that, the UN totally worthless, and the Biden administration totally showing how weak they are by being dependent on these people. So this is what French President Emmanuel Macron had to say when he was asked about Biden yesterday, if he was prepared in principle to meet with President Putin in Russia if Russia did not obey. And here's what Biden had to say. Biden said, yes. Biden said yes, but he continued, every indication we see on the ground right now in terms of the disposition of Russian forces is that they are in fact getting prepared for a major attack on Ukraine. You know what I wish? We know that Biden is feckless. We know that his entire administration are weak when it comes to foreign policy. But I wish that they would stop offering so much commentary. Just pretend as if, hey, we got things under control. We're working behind the scenes. Just lie to me. Just lie to me. You know, like you do about everything else. You know, Russia hoax in everything else, all that other stuff. Just keep lying to me. COVID vaccine mandates. I'd rather you lie to me on this particular issue than showing the world how feckless we completely we are underneath your leadership. And here's what. Oh man, who is this? I'm sorry, guys. I got lost here. So that was Biden. Then the Russian government played down any plans for a potential summit, and they warned on Monday that it is too early to discuss such high-level talks. So now you got Russia calling the shots. You see what I'm saying? Do you think this would be happening under Trump? Do you think this would be happening under a strong leader that resided in the White? If a strong leader resided in the White House? No, it wouldn't be happening. It wouldn't be happening. But the world sees a weakened and declining in America, and they're going to take advantage. My argument with Putin has always been, listen, this may just be political theater, but if he wants to take Ukraine, Putin is going to do what Putin is going to do. Who's going to stop him? Now, I know it will be a bloodbath. I get it. But it sounds like Putin may be weighing the risk. He's looking at NATO. Oh, okay, they're pretty weak. He's looking at the United States. Oh, my God, they're definitely weak. He's looking at China, the big dog. Hey, they'll back me, even though we're not necessarily the best of friends. Who's going to stop him? Who's going to stop him? Yeah, the Ukrainian people will put up a fight. And I hope that if this does happen, if they do go in full force, that they'll prevail. But who's going to stop them? Diplomatically? Okay, if Putin does this, we're going to try to work through diplomatic means to stop him. Okay, whatever. I don't think he's concerned about it. And quite frankly, if Putin destroyed Ukraine, what is it to Biden? Putin will get rid of all of the evidence that he's corrupt as all get out. Now, all of his dealings with Ukraine, with Burisma, with Hunter Biden's dealings with all of that kind of nonsense. What does Biden care? Right now, this is for Biden. This is about survival mode. He wants his party to be able to survive through 2022. But so he wants to put on a show. Kamala Harris wants to put on a show as if they're the tough dogs, but they're looking like fools, and they're making us look like fools. The Russian government also said this, or the Kremlin spokesman, it's premature to talk about any specific plans for organizing any kinds of summits. There is an understanding that dialogue should be continued at the level of foreign ministers, adding, and he added that there are, and I quote, no concrete plans in place, end quote, for a presidential summit. These guys are calling the shots. Do you understand? These guys are calling the shots now. Russia, this tiny country that's just over 1/10 the size of America in population. They're calling the shots. They're the big dogs. If necessary, of course, the Russian and American presidents, this guy continues on, the Kremlin spokesman, the Russian and American presidents can decide to hold a telephone call or connect via other methods. A meeting is possible if the heads of state consider it appropriate, he says. Moscow's resistance comes just hours after Washington extended an olive branch, with White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki saying in a statement Sunday that Biden had accepted in principle a meeting with the Russian strongman. See, Trump wanted action before he would meet with people. He said that he would meet with, no conditions, so on, etc. But he did have conditions. Hey, I'm going to meet. Look what happened in North Korea. Did you see Kim Jong-un setting off fireworks, missiles, launching practice missile runs or what have you? Did that happen It stopped. It stopped. They were scared of Trump because they didn't know what the heck he would do simply by his silence, but his negotiation was obviously strong, but in public, he was nice to them. It wasn't his goal to intimidate them in public, but it was his goal to get what he wanted, what was best for the United States behind closed doors. They know that isn't the case with Biden. Psaki reiterated the belief that Russia is on the brink of launching an attack. Added, we are always ready for diplomacy. We are also ready to impose swift and severe consequences should Russia instead choose war. Okay? What? What consequences? In diplomacy at this stage? I don't know. I think it's time for action. Officials said earlier that the potential summit will follow a planned Thursday meeting between Secretary Antony Blinken. All you have to do is look at Antony Blinken, and you can't take him seriously. And Russian Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov. Meanwhile, the Peskov said Monday, the Kremlin spokesman, that Putin plans to chair an emergency meeting of the Kremlin Security Council later in the day. Biden on Friday said he was convinced that Putin had decided to invade Ukraine in the coming days. You know what? If you're going to be, make up your mind. Either be a tough guy or don't be a tough guy. You can't play politics with dictators like this. Putin means business. Biden is a joke. So say what you mean what you say. It's as simple as that. The idea of a summit has been championed by France and cautiously welcomed by Ukraine as a way to avert a Russian invasion and catastrophic war in Europe. Man, NATO is worthless. Ukraine Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba welcomed the French effort. We believe that every effort aimed at a diplomatic solution is worth trying. Listen, all of this to say things are starting to happen. Here's what's been happening since the beginning of let me just start here. I'm sorry. Ukrainian Defense Minister Olasky, there's been some shelling going on, all right, in Eastern Europe. You also have Russia backing some separatist groups, if you will, in the eastern parts of Ukraine. I'm sorry. And this is going to continue to happen. Since the beginning of this day, this is from the Ukrainian Defense Minister, Reznikov, who said there was no sign of Russian forces pulling back from the border and that Moscow-backed rebels continue to shell Ukrainian positions. He talks about the shelling, and he says since the beginning of this day, as of 14 attacks have already been recorded, 13 of them from weapons prohibited by the Minsk agreements. This is what he told the reporters in Kiev. One of our soldiers was wounded. A spokesman for the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who's turned out to be a major disappointment. He has Trump's hair, but he definitely doesn't have his courage. Boris Johnson said on Monday that British intelligence shows that Putin's invasion of Ukraine is already underway. The intelligence we are seeing suggests that Russia intends to launch an invasion and that the President Putin's plan has already begun, adding that the Defense Secretary Ben Wallace would speak later Monday. We're seeing elements of the Russian playbook that we would expect to see in certain situations starting to play out in real time. This is, guys, I'm telling you, I say all of that to basically say this, or to reiterate what I said at the beginning of this podcast. When America is weak, the world pays attention. When America is strong, the world pays attention. Either way, they follow our lead. Either way, they follow our lead. The difference is when America is weak, there's always going to be a strong man that wants to rise up. It's as simple as that. Putin is taking his opportunity to do just that. Now, let me go into a deep dive when it comes to Canada, because I want you to understand that Justin Trudeau has been groomed to be a dictator. What we're seeing isn't necessarily a reaction to the Freedom Convoy. It's a pretext to do something more. I'll explain in this deep dive. I want you here. I want to go into Justin Trudeau. I want to go into what I believe is really happening with Justin Trudeau. And I think we've been missing what's really happening. Okay, so I think the Freedom Convoy really threw a wrench in Justin Trudeau's plans. Let me just give you some names. Joe Biden, Boris Johnson, Jacinda Ardern, Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron, Justin Trudeau, Xi Jinping, Mario Draghi, the Prime Minister of Italy, Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia, Gavin Newsom, Governor of California, Jay Inslee, Governor of Washington State, Anthony Fauci, Director of the NIAID, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, Al Gore, former Vice President of the U.S., Mark Carney, UN Special Envoy for Climate Action, T. Shanmugaratnam, I don't know, Seminar Minister of Singapore, Christine Lagarde, President, European Central Bank, Ngozi I can't pronounce these names, Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, Kristallian I'm sorry, I'm just butchering so many names. Lawrence Fink, CEO of BlackRock, Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Minister of Canada. All of these people in some way are associated with the World Economic Forum. I'm going to go into a deeper dive on that later in the week, the Great Reset, World Economic Forum, what's next. So I'm going to go into a deeper dive on that later on this week. I'll be at CPAC this week. Things are going to be really crazy. Things are crazy even now, but I want to make sure that we get into that. But Justin Trudeau's name was on that list. The Freedom Convoy was a wrench, threw a wrench in Justin Trudeau's plans. I think he's been wanting to become a little tyrant, a little dictator all along. He couldn't do it under Trump, right? I think this is a threat to the U.S. more so than Ukraine. I don't think we should have dictators in the Western Hemisphere. I don't think they should be allowed. I think there should be serious sanctions put on Canada. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'll be honest with you. I have to do some of my own research, but I think we should make it extremely uncomfortable for a dictator to border our borders. I think we should make it extremely uncomfortable for Justin Trudeau. But the Freedom Convoy threw a wrench in this guy's plans. He did not expect it. So now what he's doing, but it's kind of a convenient wrench, if you will, right? So now he has the pretext of this Freedom Convoy, the protest, blocking the streets in Ottawa. Oh my God, these racists, these Nazis, so on, etc., to now take powers that he's never taken, that he's never had. As a matter of fact, that Canada has not invoked before. All right, hat tip, Breitbart, and I want to introduce you to the people that have helped him to get there along the way as well. But I do want you to understand that this guy has been groomed for this. He's been groomed for this. All right, hat tip, Breitbart. Breitbart has been doing some great work on this. China used Trudeau dad's motorcycle diaries knockoff to promote Justin's career. What? What are you talking about? I know. I didn't know about it either. A Chinese regime-linked company published a reissue. This is, by the way, in Peter Schweizer's latest book, Red-Handed, How American Elites Get Rich, Helping China Win. But a Chinese regime-linked company published a reissue of a communist propaganda travelogue by Pierre Trudeau. And this is shortly before his son, Justin Trudeau, launched his career into politics. Pierre Trudeau, the father, himself was the Prime Minister of Canada decades ago, and he was a longtime supporter of communism and met with the mass murderer Mao Zedong personally during the visit that would lead him to penning his book, Two Innocents in Red China, alongside colleague Jacques Hebert, following travel in 1960. And I got to ask you this question, serious question. What son doesn't want to emulate his dad? If you think your dad is cool, your dad is traveling around the world and meeting these leaders, don't you want to emulate this? This guy is groomed to be a dictator. He's known nothing else. Excuse me. He's known nothing else. If his father is nice to him, his father is kind to him, his father shows him the love and affection that a good father would show a son, even though his father is a little wannabe dictator and is palling around with dictators, that son is going to want to emulate his father in some way, shape, or form. so this guy was groomed. The tenures of both Trudeaus at the helm of the Canadian government are marred with extensive business dealings with companies that are linked to the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. Trudeau has faced several scandals involving allegations of illicit lobbying, insufficient action in the face of a litany of Chinese human rights abuses, including against Canadian citizens. Trudeau said this in 2012. Obviously, my family has historical ties with China, as he promoted further linking his country's economy to China. So this guy wants to link the Canadian economy even closer to China. It's crazy. Honestly, these people are on our border. I'm baffled. These people are on our northern border. Long before Trudeau became prime minister, he joined the Liberal Party, a youth task force. This was back in 2006. And then before that, the Chinese government, through the Shanghai People's Publishing House, published a Chinese written language edition of his father's book. This is called Two Innocents of Red China. Look what's happening here. 2006, this guy, he joined the Liberal Party, the Youth Task Force in 2006. Shortly before that, the Chinese government, through the Shanghai People's Publishing House, published the Chinese version of his dad's book. Guys, this guy has been groomed. He's been groomed by his father. He's been groomed by China. He's been groomed by our media, even right here inside of the United States. I'll get to that. So this book was published, again, Chinese version. And then the book intends to tell the story of two young men that use travel and adventure to discover the glories of communism in the style of communist killer Ernesto Che Guevara's Motorcycle Diaries. Isn't this sick? Isn't this sick? The film version of the Motorcycle Diaries became a Hollywood hit about 2 years before China republished Two Innocents in Red China. This travelogue of his visit to China is filled with naivete and revolutionary sloganeering. Schweitzer writes about red-handed. Trudeau and Hebert pose for pictures with the members of Young Pioneers, the communist youth group, rich in indoctrination, and proclaimed, and I quote, "It is these red-scarfed kids who in 20 years will be the new men of a country which at that time will have been 1 billion inhabitants." It's insane. The book effusively praises Mao Zedong, responsible for at least 50 million deaths. Indeed, the experience of that superb, and I'm quoting from the book Two Innocents in Red China. Indeed, the experience of that superb strategist, Mao Zedong, this is Trudeau's father, might lead us to conclude that in a vast and heterogeneous country, the possibility of establishing socialist strongholds in certain regions is the very best thing. Schweitzer notes that the book was written amid what's called the Great Leap Forward, and that was a communist campaign that was believed to be responsible for the vast majority of Mao's body count of the 50 million people. Beijing authorities were told, who is this? Beijing, I'm quoting someone. I'm trying to figure out who. Okay, this is from Schweitzer's book. Beijing authorities were no doubt thrilled with Trudeau's account of Maoist China. On the eve of his son Justin's rise into national politics, a Chinese government-controlled publishing house released a Chinese-language version of the book. The book was launched at a lavish press conference in Shanghai with co-authors Jacques Hebert and Alexander Trudeau, Justin's younger brother, fielding questions from 50 Chinese journalists. This guy's younger brother goes to be a part of this promotion, this book launch. Alexander Trudeau, listen to this. Listen to this, guys. I'm telling you, this guy has been groomed. These guys have been hoping and waiting for an opportunity where they could become dictators. You have China. You have China working with Canada, to spread socialism here. They're doing it on our university campuses. Don't think that what you see in Canada cannot happen here. It can. And in fact, and in some ways, it's happening here. All you need to do is look at how they've utilized 1/6. And let me be the first to say it. Mark my words. You have seen how they have used the January 6th. You saw how Canada has used the pretext of the Freedom Convoy in order to crack down on dissent, in order to crack down on freedom. We have a convoy, a U.S. convoy, that's set to take place, or I believe begin on March 1st, if I recall correctly, driving from California to Washington, D.C. Do not be surprised when Nancy Pelosi and the left, even the Cheneys of the world, try to pretend as if this is the new January 6th, because Democrats have nothing to run on. We're living in scary times. Alex Trudeau has since become an official Chinese government propagandist, releasing a book copying his father's style in 2016. The government's role in promoting the Trudeau family as Justin's career launched became the subject of controversy in China after another Chinese publisher, Yiling Press, published The Legend Continues, an alleged memoir by Justin Trudeau following his rise to prime minister. Curiously, some of Trudeau, and this is Peter Schweitzer talking, curiously, some of Trudeau's national security aides were not even aware that the rights to his memoir had been sold to Beijing, not ending out until 2021 after being contacted by the media. I think what gets, is this more, this is the Canadian, this is from Richard McFadden, a former Trudeau advisor who also served as the head of the Canadian Intelligence Service. I think what gets me is that this is all being sponsored by the propaganda department. Trudeau's aides will later explain that all profits from the book were going to the Red Cross, but the Globe and Mail newspaper could not con RM that claim with either, could not validate the claim basically with Red Cross. Trudeau has recently faced global criticism for his invocation of the Emergency Act, which we will get into now. So I just want you to understand, I want you to set the stage. This guy was groomed by his dad. China has been playing a part in this as well. He has been groomed to be a dictator. By the way, that's going to be the name of the podcast for today. Justin Trudeau has been groomed to become a dictator. All right, so now the Canadian Parliament does invoke this Emergencies Act. So the Canadian Parliament voted on Monday night to approve Trudeau's, Prime Minister Trudeau's, or Dictator Trudeau's, motion to invoke the Emergencies Act by a vote of 185 to 151. So there's at least 185 people under Trudeau's regime that are thirsty, bloodthirsty for socialism, to put people under the basically to squash freedom, to squash people. Trudeau invoked the act in an unprecedented move last week, claiming it was necessary to dispel protests linked to the Freedom Convoy movement, which is demanding an end to the civil rights violations imposed by Trudeau. Trudeau's government that allegedly violations that have been invoked by Trudeau's government that allegedly are necessary to fight the Wuhan virus. And obviously we know that's not true anymore, because we know this thing is endemic. But these leaders have been holding on, these global fascists around the world have been holding on to power and using COVID-19 as the vehicle in which to extract power from the people and take power for themselves. All of these people are, again, playing a part in this great reset. All of these people are, again, a part of this World Economic Forum, have some type of ties, have some type of membership to the to this World Economic Forum here. So there have been some people that have fought against this. Basically, there's a Justin. Let me just read this. The motion to uphold the invocation of emergency powers by Justin Trudeau passed in a vote in the Canadian House of Commons on Monday, with the Liberal Party and the NDP and other allies garnering 181 votes for the motion. There were some people that opposed the motion. The Conservative Party did. The Conservative Party of Canada, the CPC, and also the separatist. I don't know how you pronounce this. Bloc Québécois, Quebecois. Anyway, and their allies who voted against it with 151 votes. This is just scary stuff. Trudeau and the government now have significant power that they've never had before. This is the first time that the Emergencies Act has been invoked in Canadian history, and it was used again against the truckers. But here's the thing. This included blockades on border crossings in Ontario, Manitoba, and Alberta, although all the border blockades had already ended. You see what I'm saying? They could not let this crisis go to waste. He's looking around the globe. Biden is doing the same thing. He's keeping his emergency powers. But he's looking around the globe. His polls are tanking in Canada. What do I care about polls if I'm going to become a dictator? If I'm looking to become a dictator. This guy was groomed for this. This is what this guy is. He believes it's his destiny, I think, to become the dictator, if you will, of Canada. I mean, he's even said as much. I mean, jokingly, but you've heard the audio clips out there. I'm not so sure he was joking anymore. Here's what the act has done so far. So it's been used, obviously, to clear the protests that were happening in Ottawa, despite the fact that people were clearing up in the streets. You know, they weren't blocking the streets anymore. They were protesting peacefully. That doesn't matter. You have to crack all dissent. If these people don't believe what you believe, if they don't think the way you think, if they don't obey your orders from on high, you got to crack down. You got to instill that initial fear. That is what Justin Trudeau is doing. This guy is wrapped up in a little prince-looking body. By the way, I'll get to that because a lot of the people were calling this guy a dreamy Disney prince, and they were making him out right here in the United States of America. They were making this guy to look and feel like, oh, he's some dreamy Disney prince. This guy has been groomed to be a tyrant. He has been groomed to be a tyrant. So they've frozen bank accounts of people that are linked to the protests, people that weren't necessarily there. I saw a video yesterday where they were literally harassing a business owner that wasn't necessarily there, but protesters had gone into this person's facility to use the facility for whatever reason. So, they are squashing any type of dissent. And sadly, and what's even more scary, a lot of these Canadian police are playing a part, just going along with it, not laying down their arms, not saying, I'm going to take hold. But this is what happens. When you massage a country with socialism for so long, they get used to power. Canadians, you're relaxed, you're chill, but when you give your government so much power, eventually they'll abuse it. And this gave them the perfect opportunity. So seizing bank accounts, how are people going to pay for things? How are people going to pay for food? It's insane. It was also used to force tow truck companies to remove trucks. Remember, tow truck companies were not going to remove the trucks because they were standing in solidarity with a lot of these protesters. Not anymore. They are being forced to remove their trucks, to remove their living. Those trucks are those trucks are businesses, if you will. I think 79 trucks or so were removed. Those trucks were businesses. Those are how people feed their families. Those are how those people make their livings. That's it. Trudeau defended his continued use of the Emergencies Act, despite the fact that it's not needed. COVID is endemic. And again, the streets were, the border blockades had already ended before the Emergencies Act was invoked. But he said, this is what the little dictator said, this state of emergency is not over. There continue to be real concerns about the coming days, whether or not he'll get to stay in power. That's his real concern. People are out there indicating that they are ready to blockade, to continue their illegal occupations, to disrupt Canadian lives. So now he's a the thought police. We feel that this measure needs to remain in place. Invoking the Emergencies Act, he continues, has been necessary. Law enforcement agencies relied on it to set up secured areas in downtown Ottawa and at border crossings. It prevented foreign money from continuing to fund illegal blockades, and it's making sure our borders remain open. It has been the responsible thing to do. No, it's been the tyrannical thing to do. Seriously, I'm in awe. We are watching, just as we're getting excited as conservatives, as freedom lovers, as patriot lovers. we're like, okay, this thing is coming to a screeching halt. This endemic. We knew that they would continue to use it in the United States. The Democrats would, because they have nothing else to run on. They have a absolutely failed presidency. Nancy Pelosi has failed in the House. Chuck U. Schumer has been a horrible Senate majority leader here. The Democrats have been just disastrous here in the United States. But I'm telling you, the world is watching us. Just like I was saying earlier in the podcast, the world is watching us. Whether we're weak, whether we're strong, like it or not, we are the big dog on the block, and the world is watching us. Biden, unfortunately, is trying to bring us down to size. Just like Obama did. There are Canadian groups opposing it. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association is trying to fight against it. The Ontario Civil Liberties Association as well. And both of those groups said the federal government has not met the threshold necessary to even invoke the Emergencies Act. And this law creates a high and clear standard for a good reason, they said. The act allows the government to bypass ordinary democratic processes. This standard has not been met. These groups say. They go on to say governments regularly deal with difficult situations and do so using powers granted to them democratically by the democratically elected representatives. But the emergency legislation, they say, should not be normalized. It threatens our democracy and our civil liberties. And then there's the Premier Jason Kenney of Alberta, who has filed a lawsuit, thank God, against the Emergencies Act. And Kenney has argued that the measures were totally disproportionate and violated natural justice. I assume he means natural law in violating civil liberties. But in order for the act to be fully passed, it must face a vote in the Canadian Senate. So we'll see what happens. We will have to wait and see what happens. But right now, it appears as if these people are on the road to tyranny. And again, I want to argue, and I'm arguing the point, that this guy in Canada has been groomed for tyranny. He's been groomed for tyranny. The same is true with a lot of American politicians, so don't think that it can't come here. And lastly, some of the people that allowed this to happen are right here within the United States, right here within our borders. You guys may recall, not just in our borders, but you guys may recall how a lot of people were talking about this dreamy day. I remember the headlines. I remember the pictures of Justin Trudeau. He's so dreamy. He's so this. He looks like Aladdin. And I remember hearing all of that stuff. Hat tip Breitbart, Canada's authoritarian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. They say far left, but I'm saying authoritarian. Justin Trudeau is facing intense media scrutiny after police brutalized peaceful protesters in Ottawa over the weekend. Trudeau was a media darling before he used the Emergencies Act to become a little wannabe dictator. He's trying to crack down on the anti-mandate Freedom Convoy, and he's done just that. And again, he's using that. The blockade was over. The blockades were over. They opened up the streets. But he's like, we can't let a crisis go to waste. That's what's happening, folks. These people are part of the World Economic Forum. These people are in on the Great Reset. Trudeau sees this as his mission. Trudeau sees this as his opportunity to shine, just as Russia sees the weakness and fecklessness of the Biden administration to advance on Ukraine, just like Xi Jinping sees that we have a feckless administration and they have a long-term goal to be the world's numero uno. They look at this stuff and honestly, if you're them, let's be honest, if you're them and you're wannabe dictators, or Xi Jinping is the real deal, but if you're a dictator, why not now when America is down? Why not now? There was an Obama staffer that oozed over Justin Trudeau. Seriously, with his looks, heart, and mind, he's dreamy. He's dreamy, this person said. He is my new political crush. And I quote this from E! News. This was back in 2015. They dubbed him the smoking hot, syrupy fox. Isn't it amazing how evil things can come in good-looking packages? Bad things, or you can come in good-looking packages. That's what we have and Justin Trudeau. These people fawned over him. This was E! News. There's a new Ryan Gosling in town, and he is too smart, occasionally shirtless, and driving the world wild. We have to give this morning's luckiest woman in the world award to Sophie Gregoire. I don't know. Trudeau's lovely wife. Yes, you heard right. The hunk, who is the eldest son of former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, is spoken for. But don't give up hope. You can still fantasize about him thanks to the tsunami of shirtless photos floating around the internet. So let me just say this. If E! News thinks he's a great leader, it means he's going to suck. All right? Political. In 2016, here's what they had to say. Justin Fever hits Washington. And they said his trip to the Capitol had residents swooning. This is political. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. This from Marie Claire in the same year. They shared a video montage of the precious Justin Trudeau moments, quote unquote, that were allegedly previously unseen. But now Trudeau is experiencing waning polls as a result of his crackdown on the Ottawa protesters. But again, who cares about polls if you're going to become a tyrant? Guys, this guy has been groomed for this. The media helped groom him. China helped groom him. And his father helped groom him. This is his time to shine. That's what we should be afraid of. Guys, we need a strong America. America must be strong. We don't have to be involved in everything. No, we don't. We don't. But we have to remain strong. We have to remain true to our Constitution. We have to remain true to who we are. We have to be that beacon on the hill. If we have allies, we should stand up with our allies. If nation states aren't allies, that's a totally different story. We don't want to get caught up in entangling alliances. But regardless, you need to understand that when America is weak, the world watches. When America is strong, the world watches. And unfortunately, we have a tyrant that is being born on our northern border because we have a feckless, senile old man in the White House. And now these tyrants are on the move. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this show. Can't wait to talk to you tomorrow. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. Be sure to subscribe to all the places. We need your help. Facebook, Carl Jackson Radio, Twitter at Carl Jackson Show. I'm going to ask you to really focus on the newer locations. Parler at Carl Jackson Show. Rumble, Google, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Click the red bell. Make sure you get the notifications. CarlJacksonShow.com. The podcasts are posted on my website. All right, guys, until next time, don't go worry doing good, and God bless you.